his wife might have if she was doing events.
All right, you could mute people as they come on. Good evening and welcome to Living Earth TV once again. We're celebrating the Bealtaine Festival and we're celebrating our living earth that gives us life and that we need to mind because there's an awful lot of us using it. And this festival both celebrates our biodiversity and natural heritage and also promotes good environmental stewardship. We are in the southeast of Ireland and focused on things in the southeast of Ireland, but wherever you are, it's great you can join us on using the internet. And wherever you are, you will have biodiversity on your doorstep, and you can enjoy and learn more about it. So that's what the festival seeks to do, is to explore aspects of biodiversity, to try and learn more and more, because the more we learn, the more our wonder grows. It's not something that we learn and the mystery disappears. There is so much we don't know, and there is so much wonder in nature. And today is Fascination of Plants Day, and this is something set up by plant scientists to promote plant science, and it truly is a fascinating area. We could look at plants and trees. They don't do anything. Look, they just stand there. They just look at that tree. It's been standing there for years doing nothing. But of course, they're really, really busy and they have fascinating lives. They're actually working on our behalf. They're taking in carbon dioxide and using that to grow, and they're giving out oxygen. And that's what keeps life for us possible, and for animals possible on the planet. So plants are so important. They're important for food as well, and they're also important source of medicines. Of course, for years humanity relied on plant-based medicines, and now once again scientists are looking to the natural world for new medicines. But also, as we learned on Sunday with Dr. Mark Rowe, nature and plants in particular are a really important source of natural medicine and well-being. Just walking in nature or immersing yourself in nature can have real measurable benefits to your health. So all in all, plants are a great thing. We love them. And today we're going to celebrate plants with a visit to the JFK Arboretum in a few minutes. But first I want to tell you a little bit more about what's been happening in the festival. We have had, in fact, today we had on the Today Show with Dahi and Nuala today was also our own Sheila Donegan talking about the festival. And I'm watching my back here because I know she's itching to take my seat now after her success on national television. We asked people to send in pictures of birds after the tremendous bird talk with Eric Dempsey yesterday. And we had shown a few of them already yesterday, and we have a prize. I made a big error yesterday saying that we have prizes for visits to OPW sites. And that, of course, is completely false, because the OPW, and we salute them, the OPW are making all sites free at the moment. So fair play. That's great credit is due there, and we do cherish our natural heritage and thank the OPW for looking after so much of it. The prize is actually a visit for two to the Lafcadio Hearn Gardens, which we opened the festival with on Saturday. So we'll have a look and see who the winner is. But first I want to show you maybe a couple of other ones that we got. Can we see here? This is the Tremor Eco Group tweeted this yesterday evening, and we were talking about buzzards yesterday with Eric, and this is amazing up close of a buzzard in Tremor. And we also had this one from the other end of the country, from Mary Cullen up in Donegal. Now, and we can't see any birds in this, but hopefully you're able to hear all that wonderful bird song. So just being out and being quiet, you can listen to the sounds of nature and, of course, enjoy the visual treat as well. But what we have decided to award the prize to is to Catherine Murphy over in Galway, who sent these pictures in. This was she sent us several pictures, and there's a beautiful picture of a swan and her family there in Galway. So thanks everyone. Our competition for tomorrow is to send us in pictures of plants, so trees and flowers, any plants. Send us in your best pictures of plants, and if possible, tweet them or put them on Facebook and tag us, and then more people will be able to share in them. So and enjoy this part of the festival. So it's time for our visit. We're delighted through our technology to be able to bring you to the JFK Arboretum, and this is a video that our colleague Ben made during the week with Jerry O'Neill, a guide there, and gardeners Ray Higginbotham and Gary Montanko. And Gary and Ray are with us in the studio, and they'll be able to answer your questions afterwards. So please put your questions in the chat or your comments as you're going along, and we'll read them out at the end. And we would really welcome people who are with us on Zoom to unmute and ask your questions and engage in the conversation, because we're trying to recreate the atmosphere of an actual site visit. If you're watching us online, live streamed, unfortunately you can't join in the conversation directly, but you can interact with us on social media. So let's head off to the wonderful JFK Arboretum in Wexford, and in the company of our guides and gardeners. Oops, that's me. Here we are now.
Hello and welcome to the John F. Kennedy Arboretum, located 12 kilometres south of New Ross in County Wexford. My name is Jerry O'Neill and I'm one of the tour guides here on this site. First of all, some background information. Why is the Arboretum here? Why is it named after President Kennedy? And indeed, what is an Arboretum? This site where we are now became the Arboretum. Between 1965 and 1978, other lands were purchased, giving the Arboretum a total of 252 hectares or 623 acres. Arbor is the Latin word for a tree, and an arboretum is a place where trees, shrubs and herbaceous plants are cultivated for scientific and educational purposes. So essentially what we have here is a living memorial to President Kennedy, a living museum. Our mild temperate climate and long hours of daylight in the summer mean that trees from around the globe can grow here. We have approximately 4,500 different species of trees and over 500 different types of rhododendron here. Our commemorative stone, our Arboretum, was opened on the 29th of May 1968 by President De Valera. The 29th of May was picked as it is John F. Kennedy's birthday. And then as we look around here to our left, we have 3 trees in a row. The first one is a mountain ash, the next 2 are silver birch. The mountain ash was planted by a man called Sean Keating. He was the man who fundraised or led the fundraising event in America for the establishment of this Arboretum. The 2 silver birch trees, 2 native Irish trees, they were planted by John F. Kennedy's 2 sisters. The first one by Eunice Shriver, the second one by Jean Kennedy Smith. And if you look at this lovely tree here in the middle at the roundabout, that's a tulip tree, a lovely signature tree here in the Arboretum. In June or July, you'd see a lovely tulip flower on it. It's a native of North America, first recorded in Europe in approximately the 1650s. It is called the Crossroads of America, and it is the state tree of Indiana, Tennessee, and Kentucky. And 4 Irish presidents have done us the honour of visiting here. President De Valera, President Childers, President Hillary, and in 2018, President Higgins was here for the 50th celebration, and he planted this native Irish tree, a rowan or a mountain ash. This is why trees have Latin names. That is a sorbus. But Australians also have a tree called the mountain ash, but it's a eucalyptus tree, and 2 trees are totally different. The Irish government continues to maintain the Arboretum, and we're now under control of the National Botanic Gardens section of the Office of Public Works. I now want to introduce to you 2 of my gardening colleagues on site, Ray Higginbottom and Gary Mantanko, who will provide an insight to our rhododendron collection and an exciting new project all about International Conifer Conservation Programme. Thank you.
Okay, hello. My name is Gary Matenko, and I'm a craft gardener here at the John F. Kennedy Arboretum. Today what I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about plant conservation and how we manage that in terms of our plant nursery, what plants we grow, why do we grow them, and how do we maintain them from seed, from cuttings, all the way out into the field. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of conservation of plants, in particular to do with the Conifer Conservation Project, which we're involved with in relation with the Royal Edinburgh Botanic Gardens. So what is an arboretum? It's a curated collection of plants that are chosen for conservation purposes. We catalog them. Any plant that comes into the nursery or comes into the arboretum by a seed or plant is tracked over time. We know where the source comes from, and it's our role to keep them healthy and alive for as long as possible out in the field. And where possible, where we have plants that do poorly, we have to mitigate those circumstances and improve it in some way. So we're part of a network of botanical gardens and arboretum that source seed from a thing called the index seminum. So this is a free service that's amongst institutions which share seed amongst one another for no profit. And we're interested particularly in wild sourced seed. So you can go to a lot of gardens in Ireland and see spectacular trees, but what are their provenance? Where do they come from? We don't know that. Its value in terms of conservation are limited. Sure, it still provides shelter for animals, it provides a habitat for them, it provides all the good things to do with oxygen and shade for people. It's beautiful, but specifically for conservation, it is very limited. So we need to know where our plants come from, because that plant in the wild, that seed that comes in, that we know comes from the wild, is a representation of that plant from a region somewhere in the wild, wherever that may be. So seed comes in, we treat it in some way, might have some manner of dormancy, so we treat it from heat or with cold, and we sow it in the nursery. And we take care of it. It starts off in warm conditions, often in the glasshouse here, and we slowly pot it on over time and acclimatize it to the weather, going out into a polytunnel, into mesh tunnel, outside before it goes into the ground. There's a lot of work that goes into ensuring that this plant survives over time through the watering, through the potting, what have you, through fertilizing it. So there's that. So that aspect. So it's a representation of a plant over time. But then there's also plants out in the field that we would have gotten here at the Arboretum, say, anytime in the last 52 years. And they themselves would have come from the wild, or possibly from a nursery, for example, Hillier's nursery, which is also associated with Hillier's Arboretum in the UK. Those plants were collected specifically somewhere in the wild. So we can trace back where those plants came from. This is very important for conservation projects, for people that are doing research, and acting as a representation of that plant. Because a lot of plants that we grow here, they're not found in the wild where they once were. Large regions of the western part of North America once had Sitka spruce. They're not there any longer, but we actually have them here at the Kennedy Arboretum. So it's an important part of to ensure that this genetic material and genetic information continues on to the future. We also take cuttings of plants which over time do poorly. Plants have a limited life range. Some trees can live hundreds, maybe even 1,000 years. Some have much smaller shrubs have shorter lifespans, but we want to keep young and good material. So we propagate it. Again, it comes back into the nursery, goes into something like this, which is a mist unit, which is a very highly humid environment. It prevents the plant from transpiring, and it helps to sort of slow it and promote root growth. And then, like I say, it goes through all of those stages of acclimatizing out into the Arboretum. So yeah, so it's an example of a bunch of things that we've done in the last year, and we're constantly doing this. We employ different kinds of technologies in order to ensure that we can improve their situation. So we have mist units which come on overhead, which help to reduce transpiration as well. We recently started moving into using this technology here, which is a root pruning technology. So your standard pot, which I would have here, plants could grow into this, and it reaches the edge of the pot, and then the roots kind of spiral, they kind of get stuck. And if you're not on top of that, moving it from pot to pot, it continues, it has this sort of, this nature of spiraling, sort of gets stuck. And if that plant goes into the ground, there's a tendency for that plant to continue to spiral in the ground. It doesn't grow out like we normally would. We recently moved into this technology here, this root pruning technology, which prevents that. It brings air to the roots and makes a very, very strong root ball, which thus makes a much healthier plant. It's kind of expensive technology, but it's one that we're slowly starting to adapt to. I suppose you'll also see at the Arboretum, I mentioned propagation of plants, and you'll at some point see this plant out in the field, which we identified as being poorly. It's called Salix magnifica. It is a Chinese willow, very large leaf, almost like a magnolia, which actually was mistaken for when it was discovered by Ernest Wilson in the early 20th century. And it has a very beautiful yellow and orange arced flower that it produces early in the spring. But it was a plant that we saw in the field that was starting to look poorly for a variety of reasons. It could have been affected by disease. There might have been a change in the hydrology of the soil. It might have just reached the end of its life, but we propagated it, took cuttings of it vegetatively to grow it on, and then this plant will be reintroduced out into the grounds when it leaves the nursery here. It'll go off into the next stage, maybe 2 or 3 years, it'll be ready to go out into the field. So yeah, that's an example of that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Contour Conservation Project. This one being right here, we're going to see some more in just a moment. This one is Witheringtonia whitei, which comes from Malawi, and it's a plant which is reducing in the environment because it's been overlogged. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why is it that plants are declining in the wild and how that relates to the project that we're involved in. Okay, so here we are outside in one of our mesh tunnels, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the loss of plants in the world for a moment. If we were to go back in time and take a look at the coverage of forests around the world, we find that since, I suppose, mankind has been altering it, we'll just say in a more modern sense, in the last 500 years, we would find that half of our forests are gone. They've been altered in some way, and are not to return. So the thing is that if we were, there are a lot of different reasons why that is. Development would be one of the major ones for people to harvest wood, not only for their own purposes, because we've gotten to a modern era where we are able to industrialize in a much larger scale. So the removal of timber from woodlands, the building of our homes, our cities, factories, changing what would have previously been scrublands with shrubs, forests into usable farmland. That's a major cause. What kind of goes hand in hand with that has a lot to do with would be climate change, or our effects on man-made climate change. So the trees themselves, the vegetation is less able to cope with the changes in the environment, the changes to do with let's say precipitation, temperature. If you were looking at something like alpine plants that grow on a mountain, they have a very specialized range that they grow in. They don't grow down in the forest, they're away on their own. As the climate starts to creep up, the equal temperatures, these plants move further and further up the mountain, but there's always the topmost of the mountain. How far can they actually get? That's the same for trees. They've adapted to grow in very specific situations. They have some range of that they can cope with when there is a change, but they can become a lot more stressed. And going hand in hand with that will be pests and diseases. Stressed plants are more likely to get sick from diseases. They're more likely to be attacked by insects that are taking advantage of their weakness. So those are, and then also things like degradation of populations, things that get fragmented over time, so that plants are isolated from one another at long distances, and they can, something called inbreed depression can happen, where there's no representation of their own species nearby. So it's kind of an interbreeding thing, and the plant again is not a good representation of itself. It becomes sickly through inbreeding. So that pollution, there's quite a few different threats that these plants have. Specifically to do with conifers, there's about there's 615 different types of conifers around the world, and nearly a third of them are threatened. And this was highlighted by the Royal Botanic Gardens in Edinburgh as being a priority of trying to conserve them ex situ, so in populations which are not in the wild, programs that we can do in institutions, with the aim that at some point those plants might go back out into the wild, might be the representations. So all around me, over to my right here, are about 1,900 conifers from around the world: North America, Europe, Japan, a lot of Southern American ones, and the plant I showed you earlier, which was Witteringtonia whitei, which is a Northern African plant. And we are growing different accessions of them. So this means that we're growing the range in which they grow in. Like I said, some of these plants become isolated in pockets. These pockets could be hundreds of miles from one another. We're growing a few dozen representations of each pocket, so that we're maintaining the important genetic, I suppose, diversity that grew in that place. I have a few plants here that I'll just show you that I have with me. Again, that's Witteringtonia whitei, which we saw earlier in the glasshouse. This plant here is called Toria taxifolia. This is actually a plant which is what you would say functionally extinct in the wild. It comes from the Appalachian region, which goes down into Florida, grows along riverbanks, and in the wild, it's been decimated by a type of fungal pathogen, which basically has made it so that the plants that are still in the wild, there's only about 100 of them, they only grow vegetatively. They don't actually, they're not capable of reproducing. Now there are maybe a handful, literally a handful of the plants that can produce seed, and the project is involved in trying to get new plants from that. So that's an interesting one. There's also a very nice plant here, which is Cyadophys. This is from Japan. It's also known as the umbrella pine. It is also something which in the past had been over-harvested through the timber industry, and now there are again fragmented populations. So there are large stands of these trees that you can see. They grow actually quite large, 50, 60 feet tall, but in those areas, there's less than 100 individuals in several pockets spread out through the central part of Japan. So our role is to conserve these plants and ensure that they can continue on. I'll give you one statistic, which sort of, I think, it talks about, it sort of shows the urgency of this. And what I'll do is I'll grab the plant just over here to highlight it, which is this here, which you might be familiar with, which is Araucaria araucana, which is the monkey puzzle tree. And you see these in a lot of large estates in Ireland. They came into the country about 120 years ago. Usually meant the family was well off or it was a very extravagant gift. Anyway, in the wild, they grow in Argentina and Chile, again in fragmented populations, and they're highly adapted to dealing with forest fires. However, in 2015, successive forest fires and persistent ones, which took place over a 2-week period, caused the death of 2 million of these trees. So these projects that we're involved in, they're almost just like a drop in the bucket. They're so small in terms of what's happening out there in the wild. So it kind of shows you the urgency of ensuring that these things are conserved for the future. Okay, so we've just left the mesh tunnel, which showed smaller plants in the ICCP. And now we're outside seeing larger ones that have acclimatized to the Irish weather. So again, I'm surrounded by the monkey puzzle tree here, and a nice plant called Abies pinsapo, which is another kind of northern African plant. And in the next couple of years, we're going to be planting these out in a very large area, about 25 acres large, in its own region of the park. It's kind of like, it's a big thing that we're working on at the moment. This will be an area where you'll be able to walk through the different phytoregions from around the world. So you'd actually be able to travel from the plants of South America into Japan, into North Africa, into Eastern Europe, to see these plants grow over time. And so that it's not just conifers. We're actually going to be growing the what you call kind of like the life partners, the eco partners that they would grow alongside with in their native range. So it'll actually make for kind of an exciting, interesting dynamic kind of place for the public to go. So yeah, it ends up being, it's going to be, in terms of how large this project is that the ICCP is involved in, we would here at the Kennedy Arboretum would be fostering over 10% of the entire collection. So they've been working at this for nearly 30 years. So it's a big boon to the Arboretum, but also the people of Wexford and of Ireland. So we really hope that you come to see what it's like as time goes on and these trees can become more sure. So thank you.
Hello there, my name's Ray Higginbottom. I'm a craft gardener here at the John F. Kennedy Arboretum, and you joined me here today in the Ericaceous Garden. Many people consider the Ericaceous Garden to be the jewel in the crown of the JFK Arboretum collection. The Ericaceous Garden covers over 12 acres here, and we have several genera from the Ericaceae family within it. The most significant of all is the rhododendron collection. We have over 600 rhododendrons, both species and hybrids. The flowering season here for the rhododendrons at JFK usually starts in December with the aptly named rhododendron hybrid Christmas cheer, and goes right through till the following August and ends with a lovely rhododendron species called Auriculatum. Rhododendrons are grown for a number of characteristics, the flower colour, foliage type, and also some of them are quite fragrant, like these behind me are the Noderi hybrids. So one of our main roles as gardeners here at John F. Kennedy Arboretum is to manage and maintain our living plant collections. With that, there's always a heavy emphasis on conservation, and it's vital that where possible we can save the genetic material of each individual species that we have within our collection. So that said, this species behind me is Salix magnifica. It's died, but before it died, we managed to propagate it vegetatively from cuttings that were taken up to the nursery. So this is the final stage in preserving the Salix magnifica that we spoke about earlier. So it has been grown on in the nursery for a couple of years, and now it's planted back into the collection. So when the plant is strong enough, we bring it back out. We remove the turf and we plant it, and we cage it off for two reasons: to keep rabbits away and also to keep the mowers back from damaging the stem of the plant.
I would like to take this opportunity of thanking everybody who has viewed this programme, and in particular Waterford Institute of Technology and the Living Earth Festival Calmast for the opportunity of showcasing the Arboretum and some of the work in particular which goes on here behind the scenes. And we hope that you will join us on guided tours soon once restrictions allow. Thank you.
And there you are. Jerry is just waiting to meet people and guide them around. He misses the crowds. So you'd all be very welcome at the JFK Arboretum, and what a fabulous place it is. Thank you very much to Ray and for Gary for talking to us there and showing us around and telling us the sort of things that are going on. And thanks very much to Ben for putting that video together. Apologies for the wind noise in it, but you know, it is outdoors, and that's what we have to bear. I'm joined now by Ray and Gary for a quick chat. And please get your questions into the chat, and we'll get going. Firstly, Gary, thank you very much for welcoming us to the JFK Arboretum, and Ray as well. It really is amazing, I think, and we have it. What amazes me is, and makes me kind of sad, is that I'm actually older than the JFK Arboretum, which is amazing given the maturity of the trees. You'd think it was always there, but to see the landscape at the start and to see that you know, in a little over 50 years we have this really mature place. I suppose it does show that landscapes can change, and that you know, that if we take action we can repopulate landscapes and manage landscapes. And that's, of course, is a very important part of what you're doing. Is it difficult, just on a, can be kind of impatient, but is it difficult to be working with seedlings and working with seeds and that, and to know that's going to be years and years before these things are grown and have effects?
Well, I don't know. I suppose it's, from my perspective, it isn't. There are certainly trees that we're going to be planting that we, in our careers here, and I mean, I'm sort of at the start of my career here, but I'll have another 25, 26 years to go. Still trees that may not be taller than me in that time. But at the same time, there's plenty of other things. Considering that Ray and I spend a lot of time working in the nursery, and you'd be surprised in a lot of cases how quickly a plant gets from seed to the planting stage. And here it's generally 3 to 5 years for shrubs, maybe up to 5 years for a tree. But and Ray would remember this. We planted out, there was an European elm tree, Ulmus laevius. We got wild seed from, I think, the Berlin Botanic Gardens index seminum, and it is extremely vigorous in growth. So we got a plant which was from seed to my height in 18 months. And we held on to it in the nursery for another year or so, but those have already gone out. So, I suppose it just, you have to have patience. There's also too many plants to be focused on trying to keep them healthy to be worrying about. If you can just get them healthy and into the ground, that's the big thing, I think.
Yeah, we had I think it was Eric Dempsey yesterday talking about birds. He talked about people who planted trees and and wouldn't live to see them mature, and that the people have faith in the future. So I kind of struck by when I see paintings of these great Georgian estates when estate owners were laying them out, and you see the big mansion that you recognize today, but all around the parkland is tiny little saplings, and it would have been years. So these people had faith in the future. So you guys are building for the future very much. We have a lot of comments and questions. I think, Gary, you spotted that one from Heather Brown, and she says her dad, Tony Hannon, was the first director of the Arboretum, and she grew up in the 60s as the park was created. And Heather, if you're there and you'd like to come on and tell us a little bit about what it was like in those early days, you're very welcome to unmute and join us. If you want to come in later, that's fine. Paul Gannon says the JFK is on his bucket list, which is great. Heather, hi.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, that's great. My father, yes, was the first director. He was given the project. He absolutely adored it. We as children thought less, it was a bit of a boring day out to go down there, and it was all just fields. And he was always talking, he was putting in these shelter belts. He was always talking about what it'll be like in 50 years. You have to think 50 years ahead. Now, unfortunately, he dropped dead when he was only 48. So that was in 1972. He didn't see it really mature, but he had that vision. And, we just loved it. Once it was open and it was civilized, and we roller skated around, and we enjoyed being down there, and we loved the plantations. And yeah, it was a great childhood. We used to go down there, take the caravan down for the summer and stay down there. And we were just building a bungalow down there when he dropped dead, so we never actually got to live there. But we're very proud of all he did and his vision, and he loved it. And he would be so pleased to see the standard that it's being kept in today. It's just lovely. It's a pleasure to visit.
That's great. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Well, he leaves a great legacy, Heather.
Well, I think I see Chris Kelly on as well, and he took over, and he did a great job as well. Sure. For a long time, my mother was afraid to go back down because she just wasn't sure, but we just all love going down now.
Yeah, I think, from our perspective, when Ray started a year before I did, I've been here just over 3 years, and what was important when we were the first, craft gardeners to be employed here. It was run by general operatives, and they've done an incredible job in maintaining it over the years. But in order to start to move the direction back towards the original purpose, which your father would have been involved in, myself, Ray, and our colleagues Dan Higginbotham and our supervisor gardener, Kevin Naughton, we all traveled to America, to the Arnold Arboretum and to the Morton,
Right.
which were places that your father
He did.
he went to lots of different Arboretum.
He
So
did. He went to
picked those
Czechoslovakia
because
as
we were
well.
kind of based off of those two.
Yeah.
So we kind of use all of those old documents, and Ray, you'd be able to speak of this, like old maps, old plant collections. We're trying to fill in those gaps of plants that we don't have currently, you know, that we've lost.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Of course, we have that larch that's named after your dad.
Yeah, the Larix Campari or something like that. Yes, there are three of them. We my kids and my mother, we planted those years ago.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's terrific. It really is. I mean, we were a bit horrified when we saw the actual museum, the JFK museum, and the JFK voice blaring out in that lovely lobby. But I wrote to the head of the Matthew and Deb, and he explained that they were going to try and tone it down a bit.
Okay.
Because I remember my father collaborating with Frank Morris, and they got those beautiful bronzes made.
Yeah.
And when my sister and I went down a few years ago, there they were outside the gents, and we were a bit horrified.
Sure.
But I think it's only temporary.
Yeah.
No, it's just a lovely place to visit.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so it has to, I suppose, fulfill a number of functions. To some people, it's a park, a visitor center, and also a memorial for JFK, and of course also it has this important conservation role in the same way that zoos do. I think you described it as, I think, Gary, a zoo for plants.
Yeah. Preservation of the species. Yes.
Absolutely,
Very good.
Yeah.
So
is Chris Kelly who's on here? Is that the same Chris Kelly? If you'd like to join in,
I'm not sure. I just saw his name there.
It may. Okay. Anyway, no pressure on anyone to join in, but if you do want to join in, everyone is welcome. Mary O'Riordan asks if you can explain if there's any difference between the rhododendrons cultivated in JFK Arboretum and the problems posed by rhododendron ponticum in Killarney National Park.
Yeah, I can take that one there. So rhododendron ponticum is just one of over 1,000 species of rhododendron. It's native to the Iberian Peninsula and southwestern Europe. But I suppose rhodos in general have been getting bad press because of the problems that are being caused in Killarney and the west of Ireland in general. But we don't have that problem. Although we do have ponticum represented in our collection, it doesn't self-seed with us, so it doesn't get out of control. What's happened in the past was a lot of cultivars were actually grafted onto ponticum, and this used to lead to problems where ponticum would outgrow the cultivar that was grafted on the top, so that would die out and ponticum would take over. But that's not a problem we have. But since the 1950s, they've stopped using ponticum to graft, so they've replaced that with a variety called Cunningham's White, and it still has the vigor, but it doesn't take over as such, So I suppose the main thing is like that ponticum is just one of over 1,000 species. So that's really it.
So I suppose the message, of course, is things in the right place, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And actually, there's no bad plants. They're just...
ponticum is actually threatened now in its own native range in Spain, which is kind of funny, when you think the problem that we have here in the west of Ireland. So
maybe they'll come over and take it back. And that leads on then other problems. These are, I suppose, the headline concerns that people have. Paul Gannon asks about ash dieback. Have you any issues with that in the park?
It's certainly, I suppose last year we went to a conference with Chagas where they talked about how they were working on a project. It's been ongoing for quite a few years to deal with breeding resistant ash, native Irish ash, which are resistant to the fungal pathogen, right? And the only reason, I suppose, not the only reason, but they had a head start on this because Jerry Douglas at Chagas had been working on projects to do with ash, to do with selecting out ash for specific characteristics. Let's say they run these trials to find what you would call a good tree would have characteristics of being drought tolerant or tolerant of damp soils, or perhaps some other feature, has a good structure, upright, and so they do these types of trials. And then when the trial is finished, the plots of trees aren't necessarily taken down. They're often left in situ somewhere. So when ash dieback started to become noticed and became a problem in Ireland, someone went back to one of those selected trials, those ones that have been done before, and they noticed that within it, there were plants that had not been affected by the disease. So they're working on a project, and it's not just in Ireland. It's Fraxinus excelsior is native to a lot of different countries in Europe. So within about 24 different countries in Europe, they're all working on trying to breed their own resistant species, I suppose. I can't remember the statistic. It might have been something like 10% of plants actually have a natural immunity to it. So it seems like that those plants could be reintroduced again. And that project is ongoing. Yeah, that's kind of all I know about it. We suppose we're not involved that much. Although we have forestry here, there's not any active projects that we are doing on site. We're kind of a place where other institutions are making use of our facilities, like Trinity and Chagas.
Yeah, so I suppose they all is not lost then, that the people are on the job, so. And but given how long it takes a tree to mature, there can be a lot of damage, I suppose, a lot of until dead trees are replaced.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I even see down the same gentleman asked about Dutch elm disease, and the same projects. The introduction of elms again will be happening before ash, because those projects, research has been going on for the last 30 years or so on it, and there are cultivars that have been selected. We actually bought some very expensive ones recently, Ray. I can't remember what they were called.
New Horizon is the cultivar.
New Horizon. It's entirely resistant to Dutch elm disease. So. Yeah,
it is a pity, because we only have the one native elm, Ulmus glabra. It is, and that I'm afraid that is susceptible. So, well, as Gary said, that the research on elms is way ahead of the ash.
And just not to be too gloomy, isn't there something else threatening the chestnut?
Right,
there's a few things. There's the leaf miner that's found throughout a lot of larger parks in Ireland. There's a fungal blight. What do you know, Ray? What it's called?
That's the canker, isn't it, Gary?
Yeah, it's a canker.
The main problem there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I suppose in terms of old, if you're thinking like old estates and sort of these enormous horse chestnut trees that you'd find throughout the UK and through Ireland, I suppose at some point that you won't have that. But there are other chestnuts that have a resistance to these leaf miners and blights. This Aesculus indica, which I think is from Burma, I believe, is resistant to it. We planted some of those out in the last couple of years. New plants.
Yeah, and is it these diseases, I presume, have always been around, but they probably advance much faster with trade and movement now than ever before.
Absolutely, yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
In terms of, in some cases, see, the diseases are around. Sometimes they're brought in by trade. In the talk there, I mentioned Torreya taxifolia, which is a conifer which is basically extinct in the wild in Florida and Georgia. And there's the fungal pathogen that affects it is not found outside of America. It's not in Europe. So we can grow these plants here. But that ends up being, that is also a thing, is when you end up accidentally bringing, let's say, an invasive species of insect, now it's in a new range, and it's in a new range where it doesn't have its old predator chasing it everywhere. So these kind of things can kind of get out of control. But yeah, the global trade has affected things enormously.
Okay, well, Mary Reardon says, thanks very much. That's really interesting to hear about the differences in the species of rhododendron, and great to know that they're not all problematic. That's good. We don't want everyone just ripping out their rhododendrons, especially not at this time of the year. Deirdre Boyle asks, can you compare the importance of trees with the importance of grass for the environment? Who'd like to take that?
You take that one, Ray, and I'll jump in.
Well, sure. I suppose trees would be considered the lungs of the world, like, you know, so they have a critical role to play, like, you know. And
I suppose importance of grass. I mean, I kind of look at it in the terms of everything in an ecosystem has its place. It has its role in its system in helping to, you know, it's these kind of chains of things like, I mean, grass in itself is one of the most important commercial crops for people, but it's also food source for variety of animals. But the sod itself is a place where you have an enormous amount of insects, slugs, nematodes, little micro creatures. So it's kind of, when you look at things, and if you don't pan out and take it the whole thing, if parts of I suppose like a food web or something are damaged, or it can affect a lot of other things. So let's say, for example, like for the importance of trees, if you have an degraded environment where trees don't grow or grow poorly, they don't function, they don't do the sort of things that they need, the ecosystem services of you know, filtrating water, you know, holding up riverbanks. If a riverbank is degraded, then you have less quality of water, less diversity in it. So it's kind of hard to parse it out. But yeah, both are important, sure.
I suppose in Ireland we have a lot of grass, but we probably don't have enough trees, and we need to get more trees. Stephen Norton had his hand up there. Stephen, can you come in?
Yeah, I'm just very grateful for all the work you down there. Anytime we go down as a family, it's an amazing experience. And to Mr. Hannon for his great idea. These people like that should be celebrated. No one less than yourself, Owen and Sheila. I was just wondering, I'm in the process of planting a few trees every year, and I was wondering, would you have a suggestion for a tree that you think needs to be planted, or an underappreciated tree for the environment, if you know what I mean, as in the animals, the birds, or whatever, that you could recommend?
I would pick, I mean, some of the native mountain ash, Sorbus acuparia. It's a beautiful tree, doesn't grow to be massive, produces really beautiful flowers and berries that are edible for birds. I believe, unless I'm wrong, Ray, Acuparia.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Other one of them would be Sorbus aria.
Yeah.
White beam, yeah. Myself, anytime I try to plant in my own garden, I do try and stick with natives. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
There you go, Stephen. Off you go and start planting.
Oh yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Paul Gannon asks, is it a myth or a fact that there's subterranean communication between trees? I was Tolkien just having us on about Ents. So do trees communicate with each other?
I've read a bit about this, and I'm certain that there is something going on. There are so indications that that there's a fungal network which connects roots towards one another. A tree sprouts, and when it sprouts, maybe a fungus gets into it at that early stage of its life, but acts as like a partner with it throughout its life. So it extends the ability for the tree in order to absorb water. Now those can get intermeshed with other plants, and there's some indication, as far as I could see in the literature, that there's communication is kind of I don't know if it's not the right word. It's just called signaling of some sort. I remember reading a report about how there are the idea of like nursing trees, like that a parent tree would assist in the or the fungal network anywhere would send sugars and liquid to saplings or seedlings of that parent tree if it's a good distance away from it, so as long as it doesn't compete. But I've also read that they've observed sugar and liquid exchanges between different species of trees that are growing in an ecosystem, and there's a payback system depending on what time of the year it is. So I don't know. I've every article, I've never read anything that says that's debunked it in a way. I kind of feel like there is something to that. Don't know what you think, Ray.
That's
certainly the symbiotic relationship between plant roots and soil is there, and I'm sure that's interconnected with, it's like Gary says, you can't say definitely.
Yeah. One other thing I would say is I know that there are instances for pine trees, I believe ones that grow in the Mediterranean that can get affected by kind of cankerworms that would eat the foliage, and they've observed that the tree itself is able to send off a kind of a gas that other trees of the same species receive, and it tells them to close up their stomatas and produce a compound which makes them less palatable. So, I mean, to me, that means that's communication or signaling through gas. So it doesn't seem unrealistic that it would happen under the soil as well.
Yeah, well, what I'd say, Gary and Ray, that is fascinating. And today is Fascination of Plants Day. So thank you for sharing the fascinating world of plants with us. Thank you for all the work you do down there. Your work is greatly appreciated, and your expertise is greatly appreciated tonight. And and thanks also to Jerry and the other guides are waiting to welcome people back. It is possible to visit the Arboretum at present, isn't it? And I would check the website for all details anyway. And of course, it's something we would urge everyone to visit over the summer. Now, I'm going to be joined by Enrica now, and she's going to look at what's coming up in the festival.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Enrica.
Hi.
What was happening today?
Yeah, so we had school sessions today on seashells and crustaceans. Very interesting with the Atlanta Aquarium. Pupils were very interested and had lots of questions answered by Anna. So yeah, I take this. So talking about kids, I don't know if you are aware of this, but we have lots of different activities and guides on our website. I can share with you our link. So if you want, go check them out with your kids. We have, for example, guides on mathematical bees and tree worksheet, or how to build snake-proof barrier or mini greenhouses. So what about future events? Of course, you can find our all the events on our website, livingearth.ie. And tomorrow we are going to be together with Copper Coast, beside and beneath the waves, understanding the impacts of climate change. Marine geoscientist Dr. Kieran Craven will explain how they are working to help map and mitigate the impacts of climate change on the Irish coastline. What else? Last but not least, don't forget to share with us your pictures. Right, Owen?
Yeah, we want your pictures of plants or trees, flowers, anything from the plant kingdom. And please share them on social media. But if you can't do that, please email them in and we'll have another prize. I think it's going to be, I have to check what the prize is. I think it's a pass for the Copper Coast Geopark, and tomorrow, of course, we'll be going to Waterford's Copper Coast. Some people may not realize it, but it is UNESCO designated geopark because the coastline there is of tremendous geological interest as well as outstanding natural beauty and home to lots and lots of biodiversity. So we're looking forward to that visit tomorrow. We hope you will be with us. And don't forget to check our website and follow us on Twitter and social media to see the updates. So we will see you again tomorrow, hopefully. If not, we're here all week at 5:30. So thank you very much. And thank you to our guests today, Ray and Gary. And thank you to all our team here for putting this together, and of course, mostly thank you to you, the participants who make the festival, and thank you very much to Heather for that very special contribution today. That was a real bonus. So